They told you the story, but they didn't tell you the truth. Every mystery leaves a record. Find it here.
The smell hit him first. Not the smell of death, but something worse. Something hidden. The traveler had been missing for weeks. His horse was found wandering near a small roadside inn on the Kansas prairie. When investigators finally pushed open the cabin door, everything looked normal. A table,
Thank you, ma'am.
4 chairs,
It's been a long day.
a curtain hanging in the
Where are
corner.
you coming from?
Then one man stepped behind the curtain and froze, because on the floor was a dark stain, and beneath the floorboards, they would soon uncover one of the most horrifying murder secrets in American history. A killing ground hidden inside a family home. And the killers? They had already vanished. In the early 1870s, the American frontier was wild, lonely, and dangerous. Travelers moving through southeastern Kansas relied on small roadside inns for food and shelter. One of those inns stood along the Osage Trail. It belonged to a quiet immigrant family, the Benders. Neighbors described them as strange but harmless. The father, John Bender, spoke little English and often stared silently at visitors. His wife, Elvira, claimed to be a spiritual healer. Their son, John Jr., had a violent temper. And their daughter, Kate Bender, she was charming, beautiful, and rumored to be psychic. Travelers often stopped just to meet her. Many of them were never seen again. But for months, no one connected the disappearances to the Bender family. Because on the frontier, people vanished all the time, until the bodies started appearing. In 1872 and 1873, dozens of travelers disappeared along the same stretch of road. Farmers began whispering about a curse on the Osage Trail. Wagons were found abandoned, horses wandering alone, personal belongings scattered across the prairie. But the most disturbing case involved a man named Dr. William York. When he disappeared, it changed everything, because Dr. William York was not just any traveler. He came from a powerful and respected family, and when he vanished, his brothers began searching for him. They would soon uncover a nightmare hidden beneath a quiet farmhouse. Colonel Ed York arrived in Kansas, determined to find his brother. He visited every farm and cabin along the trail, including the Bender Inn. Kate Bender welcomed him warmly. She even offered to hold a séance to contact his missing brother. Colonel York sat inside their cabin, listening to her talk about spirits. But something felt wrong. Something in the room felt staged. The table, the curtain, the strange silence from the rest of the family. He left uneasy. But he couldn't prove anything, at least not yet. And while Colonel York continued searching, the Benders continued welcoming travelers into their home, one by one. Visitors to the Bender Inn were always seated in the same place, at the head of the table, their backs facing the curtain. Kate would keep them distracted with conversation, flirting, stories, fortune-telling. Then, without warning, a heavy hammer would swing from behind the curtain. The victim would collapse instantly. Then the family would slit the throat to make sure the job was finished. Their bodies were dragged through a trapdoor in the floor and buried in the orchard behind the house. The Benders didn't just kill for survival. They robbed their victims. Money, clothes, horses, anything valuable. But the real horror, no one knew exactly how many people they killed. By early 1873, fear spread across Kansas. More than a dozen travelers had vanished along the same road. Town meetings were held, search parties formed, and settlers began checking every cabin along the trail. Suddenly, the Benders disappeared. Their animals were gone, their wagon missing, their house empty. When neighbors entered the cabin, They noticed a terrible smell. Then someone lifted the trapdoor. What they found would shock the entire country. Beneath the cabin floor was a cellar stained with blood. Outside in the orchard, investigators began digging. The first body appeared within minutes, then another, and another. Some victims had their skulls crushed, others had their throats cut. One grave contained a little girl. She had been buried alive. By the time the search ended, at least 11 bodies had been recovered. But many believed the real number was far higher. The newspapers exploded with headlines. America had just discovered its first known family of serial killers, and they were gone. A massive manhunt began. Posses formed across several states. The Benders became the most wanted fugitives in America. Rumors flooded newspapers. Some claimed the family fled to Texas. Others believed they escaped by ship. Several groups even captured suspects they believed were the Benders. But every lead ended the same way. Dead ends. No confirmed arrests. No trials. No justice. It was as if the killers simply vanished into the American wilderness. For more than a century, historians and investigators have debated what happened to the Benders. Some believe vigilantes caught them and executed them secretly. Others believe they escaped to Europe under new identities. There were even reports years later of a woman resembling Kate Bender performing spiritual readings in different states, but none were proven. No official record of their deaths was ever found, which means the Benders may have lived the rest of their lives free. Among all the horrors uncovered at the Bender farm, one detail disturbed investigators the most. Kate Bender seemed to enjoy it. Witnesses described her laughing and flirting with travelers shortly before they disappeared. Many believe she was the mastermind behind the killings, using charm as a weapon, a predator hiding behind a friendly smile, which raises a terrifying possibility. How many victims walked willingly into that cabin, never realizing the person welcoming them inside was already planning their death? Today, the land where the Bender cabin once stood looks quiet, peaceful, just another field on the Kansas prairie. But historians still debate the same haunting question. Did the bloody Benders die for their crimes, or did they escape justice forever? Because somewhere in the world, there could be descendants of one of America's most terrifying killer families. And if the Benders really did escape, their story didn't end in Kansas.